afternoon for our webinar, New Evangelization with the Game-Changing Generation, Part 2. I'm Emily Smith with Paulus Evangelization Ministries, and our presenters today will be Dennis Mahany, the Director of Evangelization and Catechesis for the Diocese of Buffalo, and he'll be joined by Jeff Papia, the Director of Mission Integration and Campus Ministry for the Hilbert College. Take it away, guys.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Part 2. This is Dennis Mahany. This is Jeff Papia. And the reason why, for folks who were with me about a month ago, we looked at the the premises behind all this, what the church could be doing, should be doing, especially with emerging adults. And it, just from the sense of the questions and comments that we had last time, and Jeff was interested in coming by, but I said, you know, this would really be good because we need some eye candy. No, I didn't say that. But but Jeff, besides being a great-looking guy and a campus ministry director, he's a real practitioner. He's taught in a Catholic high school, and he's out in the field. So I thought not just the view from 30,000 feet, but I'd ask for his comments occasionally and see what questions came out from the folks viewing and participating, and maybe between the two of us we can come up with some really good answers. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do Part 2 about this new evangelization with the Game Changer. We're going to spend about 10 minutes to pick up anybody who was not part of or might not remember where we started last month. So a review of the premise, if you will, for about 10 minutes, and the reason why, the rationale for a new method, a new paradigm. Then we're going to spend about 15 minutes in sections looking at ways to how to connect, welcome, and engage emerging adults. After each one of the sections, I'm going to invite you to raise questions and then offer suggestions. And we're going to specifically look at opportunities and ideas, especially that might be upcoming with Lent, you know, Ash Wednesday through Easter and maybe even Pentecost, and look at the season coming up as an opportunity to reach out. We'll keep going with the sections that if you don't have comments and questions, I'll just keep buzzing along. If you do and you want to redirect, you know, I'm an extrovert. You can redirect me very easily. And if not, at the very end, we'll have a little bit of a scripture reflection. So let's just ask God to be present with us, and knowing that God is always present with us, let's ask that God would inspire our hearts to be a servant people, a servant church to all people who come looking for Christ in their life, especially those who are furthest from the church, though they might not be furthest from God. So we ask you, God, please bless our thoughts, bless our ideas, bless our intentions. Make us servants, especially to those least churched. Teach us in this time how to connect, welcome, and engage those who need you at the center of their lives. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so here's what we're going to do. This is the topic that we said we would cover and how we would cover it. Whatever we call them, and there's lots of names for Millennials and the iGeneration, etc., but they are now the largest and most educated in the history of our species. They're smarter than us. Within 2 years, they're also going to outspend people my age. They will soon and very quickly fill most management and executive positions, as people my age are already to retirement age. They are the least likely, however, to be showing up at church. So they have the potential, because of the incredible influence they have, both inside and I think, both outside and inside, I think, the church, to be a game-changing generation for us. The question is, how can we support their spiritual quest and then mobilize their talents? They are a population of tremendous opportunity for anybody who partners with them, so it's up to us. So, game changer. Why did I use that term? Really, a game changer? I mean, that sounds so ultimate. Pope Francis, however, did say, and we mentioned this last time, we are not living an era of change, we are in the change of an era. And since these emerging adults are the largest, smartest, most empowered on the face of our planet, and they also, by virtue of when they were born, they're the best at adaptation and innovation. They could keep us in the game for the next generation to come. And the game is changing. We talked about this in the first part, that in fact a lot of people are not participating in church as we think about it, and probably 20% come to Mass every Sunday in most parishes. If we asked a manager at the call-in center, we have one here in Buffalo, if we went down there and told a Geico manager that they're only serving 20% or so of their clients, core clients, twice as many easily are not even impressed, even though they might have the insurance, and twice that number are unsubscribed or more. Those folks would not be frowning like many Catholics do. In fact, they would say, this is incredible, this is a growth market, let's get to work. So the questions that they would say is, why aren't we growing, and why aren't we at least thinking about growth? And with this population, the problem isn't the problem. The way we see the problem really is the problem. We need a growth paradigm, and we need a plan. We spoke about how there was a time when everyone has a certain amount of attention and time in their life, or gives a certain amount of attention to God in their life. So for some of us, God is a big deal in our lives and is part and parcel and the directing force in every thought, every intention, and every action. For some people, God is not. So for some people, God is very small. Others, God is very big. It's also true that for each one of us, we are involved in our faith and sharing it with other people, more or less. For some people, they participate a lot with others. We'll call church, but just the communal dimension of faith. And that's the horizontal relationship. And it used to be that if you wanted to find one, you went to the other, and they would be together. And unfortunately, that is no longer so easily the case. Now they're almost juxtaposed. And that was the example, that was actually the reality in Jesus' day as well, which is why he developed what I would call a responsive model of evangelization that recognized that everybody has a different starting point, and their conversion and their path is unique. So where does that take us? Well, Albert Winseman wrote a book called Growing an Engaged Church, and in that he said, we really have different populations of people, and most of us who are in this conversation right now, I would say, are engaged because we have high attention for God, and we have a reasonably high participation in church. I would call most of us, professional holy people. We are immersed and engaged, and we make our living at this. So we're like Tevye, and when he said in Fiddler on the Roof, if I were a rich man, what would I be doing? I'd be sitting in God's house reading the holy books. We're engaged. Nobody has to convince us. But a lot of people, in fact most people, are either spiritual seekers who find God very important but don't find us very important, or they're involved, meaning they're checking their card when they come to church once a week, but they're not really putting God at the center of their lives. And that's the challenge. There's another population we won't even really pay much attention to quite yet, but those are the people that are just too busy. And Albert Winseman calls them cave dwellers, consistently against virtually anything that's not at the center of their ego, in other words, not all about them. So what do we do? Well, it just so happens the bishops have a document out that speaks to this, because there are 3 goals, and if we're talking about the people that do come to church, but they don't have enthusiasm, then we need to foster that and show them how their life could be so much better with God at the center. There are people who don't come to church, but they are involved in making the world a better place, and we need to partner with them. And the 3rd goal of evangelization is to do that. And then the 2nd goal is engaging, using the people who are already engaged and mobilizing them, and using them to help other people know Christ and know what it means to walk as a Christian. Now, what our strategy, global strategy really is we use the engaged to reach out to the people that are closest to them, because they're our aunts and our uncles and our nieces and nephews, they're our neighbors or our colleagues. If we were to reach out to them and in that way welcome and engage them, they would actually join us at the heart of the matter, at the center of the church's ministry, and we together could connect with those people who are living their lives with themselves at the center. And so connect, welcoming, and engaging is a strategy for reaching out to these people, and it's getting more and more urgent now because there are people who aren't just outside of participation in the church and busied by their lives. They are people who have no inclination, no intention, have never darkened our door, and or have and they have been de-churched by us. They have found that we are not impressive and we are not a real resource for abundance of life like Jesus promised he could bring. So, we are challenged by these nuns and duns especially. We know that young adults, or emerging adults as I was speaking to them, are the most disaffected people. They're the least involved, least connected, least engaged. We spoke about them as being diverse people, that we can't, there's no cookie cutter, there's no one strategy, nothing I'm going to say today would universally fit or be valuable to all of them. They are digital natives, however, and they are positive and tolerant global citizens, typically have an internal locus of authority. They can be skeptical, especially about us, experimental about life, and hungry for meaning, though we have effectively unchurched or de-churched, many of them. So though they are very unique, every single person's unique, just like every one of my kids. I have 4 millennials myself, but they are unique and yet very like each other, even in that they are so subjective and individualized about how they respond to the challenges, quests, and questions about life. So we know certain things about them, and none of that would say any cookie cutter will work for anything or any strategy will work for all. So we have to be individual about them, whoever they are, no matter who. So all the labels could be helpful, but we need to leave them aside and deal with the real people of God. We do know, however, that people tend to be least religious when they are least settled, and young emerging adults are the least settled. So it's likely that they would be least religious. No matter, they can still be easily reached through the life issues that are close to their home, their lives, and purpose in life is a central question. So there's no life that does not have incredible spiritual question and quest. And so young adults, emerging adults, have plenty that's transcendent in their lives. We only need to connect with them and connect with those quests and questions. So there is no young adult that we can't be a resource to. According to one particular millennial, Jamie Manson, who I mentioned briefly in the last conversation, we can also take nothing for granted with them, because they do not take anything for granted. There is no sacred cow who will go untipped, I would say. We must accompany them at the table of the Eucharist, but we can't unless we first accompany them at the table of the world. And if we can't do it there, and if Jesus isn't relevant there, and if Jesus doesn't bring abundant life there, then it'll be tough to invite them to persuade them to savor him with us at church. So interestingly, this gal, Jamie, invited college students. She teaches, among other things. She's very gifted and accomplished. But she teaches, and in one of the courses she teaches, she invites college students to start with themselves, which is brilliant, right? Invent their own religion. And what does she discover? But she points out that though few of them identify the trappings that we would typically quickly identify with religion, there are things that are baseline, fundamental, non-negotiable, rock bottom, and they have a lot to do with the real-life challenges, intimacy, presence, and mission. And that's the brilliance of her approach, is she's very inductive about dealing with emerging adults. And at the same time, they are like us. And so just like all other postmoderns, including people of our generation, what's happened in the culture is reversed our praxis. It used to be in the good old days that we were believing, and that led to behaving, and that led to belonging. And that is no longer true today. Today it's belonging that leads to behaving, which leads to believing. And by the way, that's the way Jesus did it, so it's really nothing new. Jesus was a teacher, and called a teacher, and yet he operated no synagogue. It was all about following one's heart, which is where Jesus convinced all people, no matter what their level of sophistication, that they could find God. When the religious leaders were doling out sanctity by the thimbleful through sacrifice, Jesus was showing people where God was in their lives, all over their lives, and that's perhaps what is still beneficial today. Emerging adults' journey from belonging in Jesus was one who had a team of people around him. He was in a small group, and he had a small group of people of belonging. And yet he called people to the way, which was a way of life, and that was the first name for the church. It was not a church with doctrine and organization and hierarchy and all the trappings that we all have gotten to familiar with and comfortable with. But it was a way of life. So behaving was at the heart of that, and that led to believing, which was last. Now this is the game changer, if nothing else is that we do not faith the same way we used to, and that is game changing. So when it comes to faith, the process is the product. We have to move from belonging to behaving to believing. And that's the way I think it works with everybody, but it especially works that way with emerging adults. Belonging to behaving to believing. So then the method or the process that I would suggest is about preparing and equipping so that we can connect, welcome, and engage. What does not change is what we also talked about in the last session, that we all come to faith essentially through events in our lives that put us on a path, and this is the path that the disciples were with Jesus on to Emmaus, that it's of encountering Christ and following Christ, finding joy in being a disciple of Christ, and then sharing Christ. And that happens along the road, and it also happens in all of our lives. In the center of the circles is what happens inside of us, and what's on the outside of the circles is what happens on the outside of us, but it all moves us through conversions in our life to accompany Christ at some point or other, to surrender, turn over our lives to Christ, to begin to follow and live as Christ would want us to, and then to, at some point or other, our hearts are burning within us, just like the disciples along the road, and we want to share that with others, and that becomes compelling for our lives, and that's when our lives become a shared experience, and we begin to disciple others to faith. And you can look at this slide later if you were not part of our first conversation, and see if that responds to how you've come to faith and how you have found an interest in sharing faith with others. But the faithing process, the discipling process, is still something that's pretty much as it was. Emerging adults live a profoundly spiritual life, perhaps the most spiritual stage of life, as a matter of fact, with essential questions about vocation and intimacy, life direction, lifestyle, establishing household, setting expectations for conduct and life purpose. And Jesus is already in their lives, already accepting them for who they are. They don't have to do anything to get God to love them anymore, and there's nothing they can do that would make God love them any less. And just as Jesus walked the road to Emmaus, questioning and listening with his friends, and examining their experience of God and encountering with them God present in their life and the movement of grace, and igniting their hearts and then sending them out, discipleship is the same today. And it happens in relationships, whether it's peer-to-peer or in small groups. So what does not change is our capacity. We are capable as a parish or as a campus, wherever we are capable of connecting with emerging adults. We can align the megaphones of our social media, both inside and outside the church. Personally and organizationally, we can reach out to newcomers and inactive people. We can foster faith at home with new high-quality online resources that are growing and being enhanced every day. We can invite young Catholics to live their faith out loud and be ambassadors of compassion in the world. And we are capable of welcoming people and making hospitality everyone's business and taking advantage of the opportunities that come along every day, especially Christmas, from Ashes to Easter, as well as sacramental moments, weddings, baptisms, funerals. And we are capable of engaging them not only in a sticky experience of faith, but also in becoming a community of compassion that no other church, I don't think, has ever in the history of the world been able to do better than the Catholic Church, which forms and transforms us into intentional disciples who encounter, follow, enjoy, and share Christ. So, if that's true, and if we all do that, and if we all do that well, here's my first poll question to you. What are you the best at right now, do you find, with emerging adults? Do you find you personally, you and your ministry, are you most effective at connecting with them, welcoming them, or engaging them in the mission and ministry of your local church? What are we really best at? And go ahead and place your votes, and we'll see if this will influence either what we talk about, but also maybe there'll be some other great ideas out there, not just coming from this room, about what we can do in this regard. So we'll give you another moment or two to place your bets, make your votes. And while you're doing that, I don't know if Jeff has any thoughts, any clarifications?
No, I think one of the things that we're going to be getting to in a moment is some of the practical options or practical ideas that we have. And I'd just like to point out that in many ways, the campus that I work at is very similar to the issues that we face even in parishes. With millennials being constantly mobile and relocating, as they often are, it draws a lot of comparisons to a campus like mine where we are predominantly commuter. And so as a little microcosm of the world that we live in, my campus offers, I think, a few unique parallels that might be useful for us later. So I'd just like to point that out before we get to some of the practical applications for connecting, welcoming, and engaging.
Thank you. And that I think is giving you enough time. It looks like we're a very welcoming lot. And so we're good at welcoming. Perhaps connecting is something we need a little bit of help with. But it looks like the whole engagement question is, maybe it's because we get less emerging adults to that point, but there's less going on with engaging strategies. So why don't we all keep our ears peeled for those things and see if we can offer more of those ideas. Certainly I'll breeze through welcoming strategies, and we'll get right to the two that we need to discuss the most. Okay, so let's start with connecting. It's about connecting, welcoming, and engaging. And if we're talking about connecting with game changers, what does that mean? Well, sometimes they just show up. So we don't have to do a lot of work. And a lot of churches get a lot more emerging adults walking through the doors than they're aware of, especially weddings, baptisms. The really troubling question is, do we want to keep them? Do we want them? Do we care? Do we respond to them when they do show up? Do we ignore them? When a young person completes RCAA or confirmation, whether that's as a sophomore or junior or maybe even later, is there already a next step for them, an invitation, something else, a mystagogia opportunity, or do we treat it like this is it, you're done, you're finished? Too many churches in my area treat it as, we're done with you now, and we know you want to be done with us, and that's not the way Jesus would do it. When they do show up, especially now, especially this year in the year of mercy, there's a lot who need God's mercy in their lives. There's a great widening of the economy and gap between some people who have all they need and more, and people who are barely making it and under tremendous pressure and stress. So there are unemployed people. What are we doing about it? Is it just handing out cards and vouchers, or do we see this as an opportunity to connect with people in need who probably are doubting a lot about their worth? When emerging adults show up, and they very often are going from job to job and least stable, do we see this as and ourselves as being in the business of being Christ bearers? Can we offer prayer with people who are facing hardship? Do we see these opportunities when they come by, or are we so busy because we're in this day in and day out that we let this stuff slide by? Times of difficulty, decisions are incredible moments of growth, opportunity, and surrender to God's will in our lives, but they're also moments that we can let slide easily by. We can be incredibly influential. And friends of mine who are involved in evangelical churches, they make incredible strides with people simply by being present in their lives at these moments. Connecting. So let's talk about Ashes to Easter. And let's use the season coming up and talk specifically about opportunities. Ash Wednesday is the second busiest day of the year for most churches. It's usually typically for Catholics it's Christmas, and then very often or it could easily be Ash Wednesday. It's also a great day because it's not so busy for us, and we have opportunity and energy to do something creative around Ash Wednesday. And Ash Wednesday is a big deal in all denominations. We're getting, here in this area, everybody wants to do ashes like Catholics on Ash Wednesday. They're giving them out at the train station, all over the place. Could we capitalize on this great asset we have, perhaps placing attractive welcome cards in the seats just for Ash Wednesday, meaning color, nice, polished, glossy, coated paper, nice, real welcome cards, not those old, bent-up things that are usually sitting there most of the time. Could we have a young person, a young adult, offer a brief witness of how they have been an ambassador of mercy in this year of mercy, or how they've been challenged to conversion through their Lent or their expectations for Lent, or just share how God's grace has been great in their lives? Could we mobilize the folks who are the regulars, like the adoration folks? Could we let them run the 18 hours of ashes so that anybody could come to our doors? You know, the great door was opened by the Pope, and in every diocese, I think bishops opened the door for the Jubilee Year of Mercy. Could we have the doors open that day and have ashes available? And then how about when Easter comes along? Could we at Easter, because I know, again, that's a busy day. There's a lot that can be done between ashes and Easter, but Easter is an incredible day because people come in, again, by throngs. Could we take the advantage of it? It's a marketing day. It's not a day to try to get everything done, but it's a day to connect. And could we promote things that could happen when things settle down for everybody, which typically is more along the lines of Pentecost? So could we promote Pentecost? It's supposed to be the day of the great outpouring and the growth of the church. Could we make it a target date for growth? What would that look like? Could we secure donors to fund the printing of hundreds of corrugated plastic signs, perhaps with a broken open egg revealing the worship schedule for Sundays and Easter and anything else that might be exciting going on at the church 2 or 3 weeks after Easter for Pentecost? Could we at the Easter services encourage our parishioners to share invitation cards with anyone who's younger who may benefit from God's mercy in their lives? This is supposed to be a Jubilee year, and of course Pentecost is the 50th day in the year that it celebrates 50. It's a Jubilee of mercy, and that number is Penta. It's this notion that somehow or other, especially in the 50th day and 50th year, we should be renewing and growing. So could we arrange perhaps to have a Pentecost with a welcome and reception with returnees and newcomers on that day of the great birth of the church, complete with greeters, refreshments, staff available, even a church tour, giving out a gift coupon. How about to the first 50 people? Of course, we'd give it to everybody, but we'd say that we'd advertise the first 50, and it would be a little coupon book with all kinds of things, like free ashes on the next Ash Wednesday, and free palms on Palm Sunday, and free all kinds of things at the church, as well as perhaps discounts to local businesses that you could maybe weasel out of the Catholics who own or operate businesses in your parish. So really give them something and celebrate their life. Could we begin to build on the good weather that's coming forward after Pentecost and perhaps start blessing things we don't normally bless? You know, we bless everything. Parents bless their kids. We bless food before we eat it. We begin things with blessings. We bless our pets and animals, our homes when we enter them, when we sell them, when we fields before we plant. Travelers bless themselves. We have miraculous metals. So we're all about blessing because we recognize that earth is crammed with heaven and everything has a transcendent horizon. Why not bless modes of transportation like bicycles? A lot of emerging adults are shifting back to pedal power, and this could be an opportunity to use the bicycle as a sacramental with a small s, because of course it's a machine that extends our reach and closes distance between people. It can be used for holy purpose. Why not bless us and the operators, the bicycles and their operators, asking God to make us courteous riders, compassionate neighbors. This is an old idea, by the way. It started back in Isalo, Italy, and it's a traveler blessing. And it started in the warm months, and we bless bicyclists because we bless, when we bless them, we're blessing everybody, active parishioner, inactive Catholic, anyone who comes along who hears about it, anybody who uses a bicycle. The prayer can be really simple. It can include a word of welcome, a scripture reading, a word of reflection, and a final blessing. You can find this blessing on www.evangelizebuffalo.org, and there's a little prayer service and some other ideas on there at the link. And you can embellish this by blessing and praying for people who perhaps have been injured on the road in the last year, the last month, especially if they were injured on a bicycle. St. Mary's Cathedral in Portland tolls the bell of the cathedral in prayerful memory for each person whose life was lost in a tragic roadway accident as part of the blessing. This could be done in the parish courtyard, but could also be done off campus. There are churches around the Buffalo area that are nearby beautiful parks. It could be done in a park. And if you want to do more with it, you can make it even more elaborate by inviting the police or some local leader to say a few words about safety and the responsibility of good citizenship on the road. You can create decals with using the image that's right here on the slide, and you can Google that. You'll find that, as well as it's on the website I mentioned. You can create decals and give those out. You can include the date on there, the place of the blessing. You can give out these decals at the end of the blessing for them to stick on their bikes. With the help of a donor, maybe you can even give out water bottles with the parish logo on it. If you want more, if you're on campus and you have a historic church, why not open the church and have docents, perhaps staff people, who would give a tour and perhaps have some goodies, some refreshments there inside the church. It draws them into the church, right? And then how about thinking about how you can reach out to those people, whoever they are. And, of course, they're going to be singles, families, small children, young singles with friends, even seniors, cyclists. All kinds of people will come. So you would want to perhaps reach out at that time, connect person to person. So you want to have a lot of people involved. We have something in Buffalo called a slow roll that started this year, where they get out thousands, I think hundreds, right, thousands of bicycles, and they basically take over a section of the city on Monday, I think, right? On Monday, and roll around, and everybody goes at their own pace, their own speed, and we've got this one Franciscan guy, Father Judd, who infiltrates, and he does all kinds of evangelizing during the slow roll. It's a perfect opportunity, right? Everything's slow, you get to talk. So why not infiltrate the times when bicycles get together? There are charity races and runs and things. There's all kinds of opportunities. You just take the idea and run with it. Beyond Easter, you can also mobilize young families and make them ambassadors of mercy. Why not give children little plastic eggs around the third week of Easter and invite them to bring kids to this Pentecost celebration and invite them to share the egg and put 2 pieces of candy. They get one every time they share one so that they can share some good news. And the parents can coach them about sharing good news about why they're Catholic, why they think Jesus is a great person in their life, etc. There's all kinds of things you can do with that. But it's also a great opportunity to get them to come to church and invite them to come to this gathering on Pentecost. And then there's also a spring cleanup possibility where we can gather willing parishioners to do that, especially for people who need a helping hand at the beginning of the season. Here in Buffalo, there's always lots of stuff to clean up after the winter, and we can perhaps do that as well as gather things that people don't need and invite them to go ahead and donate and pick up things which all could go into a giant garage sale at the church, and the local charity could be identified, so we could do some real good either to the Gianna Mola Pregnancy Emergency Outreach Center. There's a shelter, Gerard Place here, for women who have nowhere to go and have children and have been discarded. There's all kinds of great things that young adults would easily participate in and want to contribute to. They also have cars. Young adults have cars, and a lot of them have budgets and drive these wrecks around, and why not offer a free car wash as another opportunity? And again, who you get to do it, young people, youth groups, other young adults, and always build in the possibility of some reception or some way to do more than just do that. Most of all, it gets us off campus to connect. That's what all these ideas are about. But I also hope you noticed that in the ideas, the way I shared them, the first ones were obvious contact strategies, but did you notice in the blessing of bicycles and even in some of these others, these aren't just contact strategies. These give us an opportunity to welcome people, to literally get them in the church and to begin to learn about them, get acquainted, and possibly even engage them. So we can engage emerging adults who are the parents of children, especially young children. They're going to be emerging adults more than likely, and they're the ones that we want to, in some way, equip for a missionary effort on their own. So we're engaging them in the mission at the same time as we're connecting through all of these strategies. Let me mention there's a few other possibilities we can't omit. We need to connect online. There should be a social media strategy for every parish. You can't be effective today. If you don't exist online, you don't exist, especially for emerging adults. So we have to answer these questions. Do we have sites? Are they device neutral? Are they mobile ready? Are there prominent words of welcome? Are they designed for the insiders or for welcoming outsiders? And do we have phrases that communicate that? Or is there jargon right on the front page? Do we have presence on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube? And do you have a promo to share? If you go to my own parish website, I run the website and the social media, I have a video out called Come to Know God's Mercy, and it's an invitation. It's a quick little animoto. It's simple, easy to make, and yet it says who we are and invites people to know God's mercy in this year of mercy. And it shows the complexion and the diversity of our parish. So those things should be out. And I don't just have it on the website. Of course, it's out on Twitter and it's out on Facebook. So I'm engaging everybody to share it with other people. So we should be reaching out. This could even be done on the highways and byways. We have our diocesan young adult ministry office has a Have Faith Buffalo, a new website, and we're trying to not just promote it digitally, but also promote it with real strategies on the highways and byways especially. So lawn signs, car magnets, billboards, streaming things at Google Hangout, and then posters, flyers, cards at gyms, restaurants, hotels, hangouts. You want to find hangouts. And in this area, we know exactly when advertising is cheapest on billboards, so there's even going to be billboards about that. If you want to go to another way to connect or to enhance connection is to stay connected. There's a group called John 15 at Texas A&M, which of course refers to the vine and branches that we have to be connected to Christ. So on campus, the campus ministry at St. Mary's, they invite freshmen to join a family, a small group, and they do a lot of things together through the small group. And in the small group, they put all their best intentions on the calendar, and they encourage religious dialogue and vocational exploration, and they do all kinds of stuff with these newbies on campus. And they stay connected, and they do it in a variety of ways, including extensive spiritual direction and spiritual coaching services. The other wisdom or genius of the strategy is they use small groups. And if you want to connect and retain people, small groups is the most effective strategy to retain people. So retention is key, and if you want to do that, it's done best in small groups. And in the numbers, if you look, you can see that to double the size of a congregation of 250 in 10 years, if you only have a retention rate of 30%, it takes you a lot of people to double the size of your congregation. But if you have a 70% retention, which is what a lot of small groups do for a lot of churches, you can do that with a lot less effort. So small groups is miraculous, and St. Mary Catholic Center, Texas A&M does a lot about that. How about comments, questions? We'll let Jeff offer some thought and then see if you have questions along that line.
Yeah, one comment I would make is, following up on what I said before, arriving at this position at Hilbert College, the campus is largely commuter-based, and so as a result, we've got a very, very interesting sort of microcosm of what it's like to be in a parish. I've got my campus ministry office, and we've got our chapel, but we've got millennials floating in and out all day long, and none of them are ever staying in the same place. So in order to do ministry in that environment, it's not enough to sit in the office or in the chapel and say, well, if we build it, they'll come. You'll find yourself sitting in the chapel, by yourself. And so instead, it's looking for those points of contacts. Where are they and at what times? Well, if I know, for instance, that a majority of them are going to be in the student center or in the cafeteria at 12:30, that's where I'm going to start doing ministry. So rather than saying if you build it, they'll come, you sort of want to graft yourself onto existing opportunities and ask yourself, where are they and what are they thinking about?
And I think you might have seen some of the other comments from Jason and Paul. So I think we're on the right track. I think we need to get off campus and get out of the boat that I referred to at the first meeting. There's a lot of ideas for welcoming. I'm going to buzz through these, but I do want to mention that some of the most significant welcomes I have not been at Catholic churches. I was at one right around the corner from where I work here, and they have a great little welcome center, a real guest central that says everything about what they do, and right here on Delaware Avenue, which is just 2 blocks from where my office is. And so they have cookies and coffee or tea, and it's just there for anybody who walks in the door. It's incredible. It's got a brochure about everything that they're doing and all the best stuff, and the stuff that really says what they value and who they are as a community. So it's really wonderful. Barna and Kinnaman in their book Churchless were real, I thought, prophetic when they said the church is most church when it's church to those on the outside, and that, of course, relates well. We also can welcome relocators. I know the Paulists have the service where they can send you, for I think it's $40 a month, they'll send you a list of everyone who's moved into your zip code, and so they do all the work for you, and you can just be the first person that sends a little postcard or something, or shows up at their door when they move into your area, and that's a wonderful way, because again, the most mobile people again are the youngest people, and at least 1 in 5 of them are moving every year. So how do we do that, and what do we do? How do we follow up with that? And newmover.com is another service that actually is soup to nuts. They basically do it all. They have a beautiful polished little postcard that's real glitzy, and it's got cute little sayings that make your heart melt, and they, like a dog with big basset hound with the ears up, heard you were in town. Real gorgeous, funny ones and warm-hearted ones. So you can, in that service, I think it's $79 a month, or no, I'm sorry, $40 to set up, and then they'll charge you as much as you want to pay per month to connect with as many people as you want, and you can set the budget. So you can say, for the first 10, 20 people to move into the area every month, send out our card, and then you pay 79 cents per card that goes out, which, as you know, I mean, the postage alone is I'm sure it's around 40 cents per card. So there's no way you could even do that for 79 cents without probably costing the same and having to do all the work of digging out who's moving in, who's moving out. There's lots of ideas. And then what you do with them, whether you have a guest survey when they show up so you can stay in touch, those are all. You have to have skillful greeters. It's not a natural talent. Welcoming is something that we do well. There were a lot of ideas. Does anybody want to add a welcome idea that you know, that you use? This is where you can plug it right in. Go ahead and chat it in, and we'll voice it if it's not viewable by the folks on the screen. Emily, are you listening in? Can they see our audience questions, or is that just us?
The audience questions are only visible to us, actually.
Okay. So we haven't. Then, if you would, I'll voice anything you come up with if anybody's got a great welcome idea.
One that I'm going to mention, talking about the new movers, when I moved into my apartment, because as a young adult game changer who constantly moves, that happens a lot for me, I got probably about 6 different Protestant churches who all sent letters to me. Not a single Catholic church did, even though I know there are at least 5 that a stone's throw of my apartment. And then this past Easter, I got several invitations from different Protestant churches in the area to invite me to their Easter services. And again, nothing from any of the Catholic churches in my neighborhood. So that's when I think it's really easy to do. And, I look at them, and had I been a young adult who didn't already know, what my parish was, I might have just picked up and, said, well, hey, I'll explore and see what else is out there. So I think that's a really good suggestion to think about.
Okay, I don't see any other suggestions about welcoming, but again, that's our strong suit, so we'll presume that we're doing well with that. Then the last step between connecting, welcoming, and engaging, and this was our week suit, so let's take the 10-15 minutes around this. It's about engaging people, and again, Albert Winseman in the book said it's really as simple as answering 4 questions. What do I get? What can I give? Do I belong? And can we grow together? So the giving positive answers to these questions will engage everyone regardless of generation. So let's talk about what do I get. If they're emerging adults and then they're parents, then they need help. I mean, anybody who's a parent knows that this is really tough. There's very little time, very little energy, very little support. Everybody's working. Extended families are pushed. So there isn't the same support structure as in days gone by. Parents are critical, however. Christian Smith and all the social research indicates that the single most significant people in everyone's life, especially at the ages when most people check out of church, are their parents. And if not, their grandparents. So can we gather parents and gather grandparents using strategies like Strong Catholic Families? That's sponsored by NFCYM, and you can go on their website or just Google that and get resources. It's basically a community organizing approach that brings resources to bear. There are great services out there. Vital Faith at Home, again, another great service that has a website that's got more resources than you can possibly use in a lifetime, and it's got them all categorized by activity and prayer resources and discussion questions and Bible study, you name it, and they're all there for everybody's perspective. Young families, grandparents, aunts, uncles, godparents, you name it, you can find yourself on that site. We can curate the services that will be necessary and that people will need in a pinch and don't have the time or energy to reach out. We can offer what's out there. There's all kinds of great stuff through operations like TED Talks, gather young families to share life. All we have to do is give opportunities, and young families will find great resource with each other. Can we accompany them in dating as well as getting married, and can we help them deal with all the big questions that are just about family and relationship? And there are great websites, again, out there. For Your Marriage is the bishop's sponsored one, and there are others I'll point to in a minute, but the topics can be planning a Catholic wedding, tips and advice, when things get rough, financial, dealing with finances, dealing with grieving, dealing with families that don't, like the way you're taking your own family once you get independent. There's all kinds of stuff out there. And then parenting, all kinds of issues. So there are lots of sites out there that will help this. Growth Track, For Your Marriage, Vibrant Faith at Home, and there's even more than that. But those are sure winners. So could we partner with couples to help newly married couples? Within the first 2 years is when most marriages hit the roughest water. So could we help them, especially in those 2 years, use the ministry of accompaniment strategy that Pope Francis is calling us to around that. So St. Valentine's Day, which is also World Marriage Day, is a great opportunity. And the slide again here will show you there's ways to do it. We should be attentive to not running it and trying to empower people to do it and become resource people in that process. I'll let you look at that when there's more time. What do I get? Well, on Sunday, we hopefully, if you're a liturgical church and you do lousy worship, there are not many ways to replace that or to make up for that. So you really it should be prime time, and we should be putting our best foot forward. And there's lots of ways to do that, but it's got to be where we excel. It's got to be where people say, I get something out of this. Now let's turn to the second question. What do I give? Well, Winseman and the folks at Gallup indicated that if there's one thing, just one thing you can do, if you don't get them into a small group and you want to engage them in your church, the others simply help them identify their God-given gifts and give them an opportunity to talk about that with someone. And if God willing, you can help them do that, give them an opportunity to do that with your church. There's lots of ideas there. There's you can use the Strength Finder from Gallup, which I think is you go buy the book, you go online, you do it for free. Some parishes, some churches subscribe as a whole community, and they pay some lump fee, and they do that through Gallup. I think there's a way to subscribe as a community. Chrissy Temperament Sorter is another one that's real familiar. Or there are lots of free ones that are in books, and that you can. There's one that's there, a PDF, the one I adapted from someplace that somebody gave me, and you can help people do that in lots of ways. What do I get if we engage, or what can I give? If we engage people through spiritual direction and coaching, then we can help them name their quests and questions in life and give them opportunities to find opportunities to slow their life down long enough to think about where they're headed, where their life's going, and what is their life, what do they want to make of their life, and what part do they want God to play? All those essential questions need time and need quiet and moments to do that. And how am I going to live out these spiritual corporal works of mercy? There's lots of resources out there. Some are listed there through Loyola and others. So can we help them, and can we engage them in these ways? Can we engage them with money? Can we help them, young emerging adults and young couples have the worst habits, financial habits of anyone in the world, according to the financial planners that I've talked to, and they could use a lot of help. So why not get a parishioner who is a financial planner? I know mine, who also happens to be a Catholic, and I know the parish she goes to, and I know she does this not only for me, but she does it for other people who don't have any money, and she does it for free, even though she also has clients that she makes a boatload of money off of, but she does it as a ministry too. So could we provide that? Can we acknowledge and make giving easy? Can we just acknowledge that most young emerging adults, in fact most of us, don't ever write out checks for $500 anymore? We don't carry $500 cash anymore. We use electronic means to pay everything, almost everything. So, and can we also acknowledge that if most people don't come to church, we're stupid if we expect to only get paid when they come to our church. There's all kinds of reasons why people don't come to church. Why are we pitting our entire budget for whatever ministry, organization, parish we have on the hope that they will show up on Sunday when we know they usually don't, and anything could throw that off in their lives or in the schedule or the weather, and all of a sudden we have a budget shortfall. When there's all kinds of options, whether it's PayPal, parish pay, push pay, there's lots of ways to provide opportunities for people to continue to support the ministry and to do it easy for them rather than force them to do it easy for us, which means walk into church, stay for Mass, and put it in the collection basket. What can I give? There's lots of ways to help emerging adults give, and some of the ones I've seen, these are just ones I've seen lately. Snow Angels, there's a church that in this diocese that invites emerging adults, especially who are sure-footed and more athletic than us old people, to be there and to literally make appointments with elderly people who are very unsteady on their feet, to be there for the Mass that they like to attend, and to be there simply to help them get from their car to the church, and to be a smiling face. So it's a greeting ministry, but it's a guardian angel, if you will, to get through the snow and get across the ice, which no matter how good you clear the parking lot, there's always a challenge for someone who's elderly. Young people love to be of help, but they also feel very awkward, and old people tend to be fiercely independent. So why not set it up for them? Broker the relationship and start an incredible friendship. There's all kinds of bad stuff that happens around the Super Bowl, which is coming up, and there's all kinds of organizations that will easily facilitate us intervening in what's going down. You can either go to let's see, where is it? So there's a buyer's guide around this, and endslaverynow.org I think is the first website that you can start with. EndHT, which is End Human Trafficking. They have all kinds of ideas about ways that you can impact and change buying practices for people and encourage corporate responsibility for where things are, where they're coming from, how things are made. But human trafficking, especially in sex slavery, hits a real peak around sports events, and the Super Bowl is a perfect example when thousands of young people, especially women, are at incredible risk, and they're literally forced into entertainment, forcible and awful forms of entertainment for the benefit of people who are wilding at these times. So there's that possibility, and there's also great ideas that the emerging adults come up with themselves. At University of Illinois, they to give them a break from exams, they actually sing Christmas carols. So you can dial the number there for Dial a Carol at University of Illinois, and whoever's on, and they take turns for certain hours, and it's like a 24-hour service because emerging adults are up all that time, and some old people, believe it or not, are up that time too. So you can dial a carol. Be My Eyes is another organization that lets people who are sighted, by using the technology of the mobile device, be the eyes for people who can't see but need to find things around their home, for example. So there are 24,000 people about a month ago that were using this service, and there were 240,000 volunteers, but there actually is much greater need, and the need is growing as more people find out about it. So the opportunities are incredible to serve. Do I belong? Well, there's lots of ways we show people we belong, and most of all, we simply have fun with them. My family went to an escape room this Christmas. I don't know if you've seen those, but go online and check those out. They lock you in a room for an hour, and you use the clues that you can find, and you escape. And it's a great team builder, so you can do that with a team as well as people that you like and just go out with. We can organize challenges and adventures, whether it's at the rock climbing gym or do the American Ninja competition and do a silly version of it, and do it in your neighborhood or do it on campus. You can do road rallies where people are given clues and have to find their way to a certain place where there's a party. Letterboxing, geocaching. Again, go on the web and just read about all these. They're all fun. Every area has got letterboxing schemes that have been set up by other people, or geocaching adventures. Tournaments, there are game tournaments all the time, and a lot of places are offering Zumba, yoga, Tai Chi with Christian meditation, just as a way to have fun and stay healthy and be good-spirited with emerging adults. And the last question of the four for engagement is, can we grow together? So how do we grow together? The great idea that was offered, that I offered very quickly, that again, I heard Jamie Manson say it first at the NCR conference that they had a month or so ago, but this is Alice Kearney's idea, is she heard that she was asked to start a young adult ministry at a parish and revive things, so she started to gather with them and get to know some of them, and they complained that Mass wasn't feeding them, so she literally fed them, and she taught a life skill at the same time as had a good time, and they made bread. They learned how to make their own bread, and they sipped wine and did some wine tasting. And of course, that's a great catechetical moment. Bread and wine. I mean, the opportunities are endless. They also did some simmering some soups in the winter months and talked about Sabbath. So they did monastic style soups that you can find out about, and talked about the need for rest and reevaluation in their lives, as well as made meals for shelters for women and children. They just made mealtime and making meals the beginning of a whole ministry, and that brought young people together and then brought them to church. I'll skip through the questions and ask we'll put Jeff on the spot first, about strategies for engaging. What sounds like the best strategy to engage emerging adults on campus or in parish?
Well, obviously it's always going to be context dependent, but one of the questions that I think is challenging for me in campus ministry, and I think that all of our parishes need to be asking themselves is, whenever we're thinking about ideas, brainstorming, or coming up with strategies, I think the operative question is, how is this relevant? One of the biggest hurdles that I think the game-changing generation has in that chasm between my life and church is, how is that going to be relevant to me? How does that speak to me? What does it have to do with my life? And so as we're coming up with ideas, as we're brainstorming, I think that the constant question or the litmus test that we need to ask ourselves is, in what way is this relevant, or in what way does this speak directly to the life circumstances of the generation we're reaching out to?
Yeah, let's be their life directed, not ours. This is the last thing I want to say before I just open it to any last thoughts, and the hour is up. But this kind of builds on what Jeff was saying. There are a lot of ideas. I could have filled another hour just with ideas. But here's the deal. Some parishes, in trying to search for a solution, they make this mistake. They see something working at parish A, and they say to themselves, well, why don't we just transfer that idea to our parish, parish B? Let's just try that here. Whatever the strategy is. It could be a young adult Mass, like Sister Act style. It could be, you name it. And they forget to recognize that the reason why any strategy worked at any parish, Parish A, is because of the particular conditions, capacities, culture, the needs, and the resources of that parish. And those might not at all be duplicated at your parish. So not just having a great idea, not just going to newmover.com and signing up for the card service so that everybody gets a welcome card from your parish when they move into your area. That may not be something you have the capacity for, because of course you're inviting them to church. Well, what are you inviting them to? Is it really going to be glad to attend, or is it going to be an experience of isolation or rejection? So just inviting them isn't the right strategy, and just any strategy isn't the right strategy. What we need to do is think about why a strategy worked in that situation and for whom, which is, I think, Jeff's good point, and then adapt and apply that to the people we have on the ground where we are. So the bottom line is effectiveness doesn't necessarily just come from doing things right, it comes from doing the right things. So with any of these ideas, and you can go online after this webinar and cruise through these pages again. You can reach me here at this diocese if you want. I can give you more. You can go to the website www.evangelizebuffalo.com, or Have Faith Buffalo, which is our young adult directed one. And we're happy to reconnect with you and share more ideas or steal more from other people that are doing it better than we are and offering those to you. So that's it for our thoughts. Emily?
Yeah, let's see. I had a couple questions come in, so I'll see if any other ones come in right at the end. One person I wanted to ask, and you might have touched on this a bit, but how can parishes shift from the idea of sacramental prep where you kind of expect people to leave to one where you expect them to stay and engage afterwards? How do we kind of change how we approach sacramental prep? So if that makes sense as a question. I think I phrased that correctly.
Sacramental prep, like for a young couple, like an emerging adult who have little children, right? Baptism?
Sure, or maybe like an RCIA, so that, you have people who go through RCIA as a young adult, and then what do they do afterwards, kind of? How do you make sure that they stay and you expect them to stay?
Yeah. This is going to be that person-to-person thing. If we have connected, welcomed them, and we've gotten to know them, RCA is the easy one because you really get to know people when you share faith on a weekly basis. So you're getting to know their life experience, you're getting to know what they love to do, what their passion in life is to do, what God's given them to do, what they're good at. Once you find out that stuff, it's really about finding out, well, where do you want your life to go? And this is where the spiritual direction or spiritual counseling comes to play, which some parishes do when they help young couples get married. They don't disconnect. And when other parishes go through the RCA with someone, they don't disconnect, and they stay in a relationship. They have someone who's, everybody needs a Paul, a Silas, and a Timothy. Everybody needs a mentor, everybody needs a colleague or a sojourner, and everybody needs someone to apprentice. So some parishes do that, and I think, Jeff, you add to this, I think it's going to be a person-to-person thing. So everybody's interests, desires, passions differ, but we've got to find out what they are.
Certainly, yeah. I think, in many ways, as a church, we're very good at sacramentalizing, but we struggle at evangelizing. And one of the shifts in focus that we can take if we want to foster that lifelong relationship with a community and a church is, rather than making the main emphasis of our programs catechesis and sort of knowledge and getting them in tune with a sacrament per se, are we fostering that all-important and fundamental relationship with Jesus? Jesus is kind of like the center of a bicycle wheel. All of the spokes go out from the center, and that's what gives the whole wheel its structural integrity. So, are we feeding them that relationship with Christ as the reason and as the purpose and as the primary motivation for the sacrament that they're about to take? Because ultimately it's that fundamental and underlying relationship that's going to keep them coming back, not necessarily, I've learned everything I need to know about the sacrament I've just, prepared for.
And I would reiterate the small group strategy, whether it's preparation for sacraments. We have one parish that's gone to small group for everything, whether it's marriage prep, baptism prep. They go in small groups, they participate, and then they're kept in a small group after the sacrament has been celebrated, first celebration.
Yeah, you were saying how important it's like the personal relationship with people at RCA. I went through RCA myself, actually, 3 years ago, and one of the ways I got involved in the church was just afterwards. The director of RCA said, "Hey, you seem like you really enjoy teaching kids. Would you like to teach Sunday school?" And now, 3 years later, I'm still teaching Sunday school. So just reaching out, because sometimes we hesitate to ask people to be more involved because you don't want to pressure them. But I was so excited. I was like, "Yeah, of course I want to do that." And I would have never thought necessarily on my own how to even get involved in something like that. So just reaching out and inviting people where their strengths are is such a great gift, and people are really excited to share them usually.
Yeah, and this is where social media works. If you're in touch with somebody, you can just you got them on your list, you got them in your circle. They're a fan, friend on Facebook, whatever. So you can be pushing out stuff like the thing on the sex slavery at the Super Bowl. That's something you push out, and all of a sudden someone will respond to that, and you've shown them an opportunity to exercise and live their faith out loud.
All right, I think that's probably most of what we had. A really great discussion. I'd like to thank both of you so much for participating and sharing your wealth of ideas. And like you said, there are a couple ways for people to follow up with you if they have further questions or want to continue exchanging ideas. And I'll be sending out a recording of this later on, either today or tomorrow, so people can listen to it again and kind of bounce around their ideas. And if anyone ever wants to share ideas with us, we love featuring what you're doing in your parish in our newsletter. So we send out a monthly newsletter called the Evangelization Exchange. And when we get things to share from parishes, what they're doing, it's really great and can help inspire other parishes out there to find something for them to do. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we hope you have a great afternoon.